Well, hello everyone. How are you this afternoon? I am Lawanda Woods Howard, and I am with PurposeBound Women, and we are so excited that you are with us today. I want to thank you for adapting to our change in schedule. I know that many times we have come on a little bit later in the afternoon, but our guest speaker today is from England, and so as a compromise, we decided that 3 o'clock our time, Eastern Standard Time, would be better. It's 8 o'clock there. So we don't want to keep Katie up too long, but I do appreciate you all making the change and being with us today. I tell you, I am really excited to share Katie with you. She and I met, and you know that I have this fascination with the growth mindset. And so she and I had the opportunity to meet, and the conversation that I had with her was just so engaging and so intriguing. I just thought she has got to come on and share some of her knowledge, strategies, and techniques with you. Her particular area is the growth mindset in children. And so I know that with COVID-19 going on and your kids were home much earlier than you had anticipated, that this will be a great time for you to develop some of the strategies that Katie will be sharing with us while you have your kids at home this summer. So I am going to go ahead and introduce her, and then we will bring her out and we will have the most intriguing conversation about growth mindset. So Katie, and she's known as KJ Walton, is a teacher, she's an author, she's an illustrator and a coach from England. And she has a passion for helping individuals develop a growth mindset, particularly the mindsets of children. She has written 3 books, and she has another book that is coming out sometime this year that I know that you will be very, very interested in. It's called The Mindset Guardian, and that is due to be published sometime this year. And it was written for parents for creating that growth mindset in their children, developing a growth mindset culture at home. She is available to answer your questions today. And so if you do have questions that you would like her to respond to, please make sure that you put those in the comment section, and I will make sure that I forward that information over to her so that she can answer her questions. She is on a mission to educate and help individuals cultivate a growth mindset, and exploring how to surround children with that type of culture as well. So Facebook family and friends, please help me welcome KJ Walton. Hello, KJ.
Hello, Lawanda. What a fantastic introduction. Thank you.
You are welcome. I meant every word of it. I'm really so excited for you to share with us. But before we do move forward, I do want to take the opportunity to thank all of our essential workers here and in the UK who are doing all of the things that they need to do to keep us safe. So we really want to thank you all, and we pray for your protection as you continue to go about your days. So anyway, I am so excited. I know today we are going to be talking about the growth mindset culture at home. But before we get started into that, tell us how you became involved, or how you became interested in the growth mindset.
Well, it seems like a very long time ago now. I think it's about 9 years ago. I was working in a school in a place called Hertfordshire in England. And the teacher, or the head teacher at the school that I was working with at the time, she had kind of sat, and once she joined the school, she sat for a couple of years to kind of get a feel of the school, to kind of get an idea as to where she thought we needed to go with things. And 2 of the things that she came back to us and said were, I think we have 2 main difficulties in the school. If you go and talk to children, or you kind of get a feel for what's going on in the classrooms, there are 2 very different attitudes that are going on that are as equally as difficult and challenging for us as teachers in terms of their learning behaviour. One is what you might call child A, who was very much the sort of child that would attack something, try something new, some new learning. And if they couldn't do it straight away, they were not interested. Defenses would go up. They might start acting out. And then the second child, say child B, was actually a child that in some ways is a bit of more of a worry, because they are seemingly sort of labelled as being quite bright, whatever that might mean. And they've kind of got that stigma and that label. And there's so much kind of fear there of hanging on to that label that they are desperate not to be seen to make any mistakes. And so therefore they were sticking very much with what they knew, not really challenging themselves for fear of actually not being seen as this clever child. And the head teacher said to all of us as teachers, I know something about this theory mindset by Professor Carol Dweck. I have the book. I would like you all to go away over the summer, and which was very brave of her, and read this book, which we all did. We were quite a small staff because it was quite a small school. And then we came back on what we call, I don't know what you call them in the States, but we call them inset day, so our training day at the beginning of term.
Yes.
And we had a very open forum, a big discussion about what we'd read, what we thought about it. And it actually reduced some people to tears, because I think, having read it, they'd got children themselves that had kind of grown up and gone through education and had their own struggles. And they said, it's hitting home that some of the issues that we feel that they had were because of certain things that perhaps I'd done or could have done differently, and maybe I could have helped in some way. So, and for me, I read the book. I'm one of my, when I went to university the first time round, I actually, as part of my degree, I studied psychology and was always very interested in the developmental side. And I think I read the book and it sat with me, and I thought, yeah, that's really very interesting, and I can see where that's come from. And having worked in education, I could bring that kind of angle to it. And it wasn't really until I just got on with my everyday life. And then I realised that actually I was having quite fixed thoughts about certain things, and it really made me start to be aware of my own behaviour and my decisions of things I was going to do or I wasn't going to do because I thought I might fail at. And I thought, how much in my life have I not done because I was scared of failing? And I think I really genuinely feel that we put children in a classroom, expect them to have all the kind of this resilience and this armour that they're going to have to learn new things and they're not going to get things straight away. And we expect them just to deal with that and be resilient to that. And they're kids. We have to teach them about a lot of things. So why do we not have to talk to them about what learning is? And it's that fear of struggle and feeling like somebody else next to you is getting it when you're not. It's a horrible place to be if you're not kind of armored up for that and ready for it.
Right. So my viewers know about my fascination with the growth mindset as well. But there are probably some people who are joining us for the first time. So in your own words, would you kind of explain the difference between a fixed mindset and a growth mindset, and then maybe talk a little bit about neuroplasticity?
Absolutely. Okay. So in one of the books that I've written, so two of the books I've written are picture books for children, which are kind of stories that explore certain facets of the theory. But I actually produced a book for schools, for teachers, to create the culture in school, because I suddenly realised that because we set out on this journey as a school that we were going to try and cultivate the culture. But at the time that we started, there was nothing out there with actually give us a framework to work with. So I realised that after a time, I'd actually brought together a whole host of activities. So I produced a book because of that, to kind of help schools out with wanting to do it. And one of the pages in the book, I actually sat down with the theory and thought, we've got a framework here, but actually we need to make it accessible for kids. And part of it, I think, is that they need to understand what the features of the mindsets are, but in a way that they can kind of grab easily and pair up. So I looked at what the aspects of the fixed mindset were coming out from her research, and then paired them with an opposing growth one. So if I just go through those, that might start to kind of open up the understanding.
We have one of our favorite viewers is here, Effie. She says, hello, ladies. Effie, can you go ahead and start us a watch party or something? Because this is such some great information. I definitely, and if you know any teachers, make sure you share this with them because they really need to hear what KJ has to say. I think this is an awesome opportunity for us to help our children right here in the States. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Katie.
No, that's fine. That's fine. Okay, so fixed mindset. The traits that I've listed are that you avoid challenges. The world is fixed. That's how you perceive things, that everything's just going to stay the same. We can't mega change things in any particular way. You ignore feedback. So you kind of take feedback as a personal attack rather than listening to what's being said and seeing if you can use it. You hate criticism, you hate making mistakes, you're threatened by other people's success, particularly if it's something that you're kind of known for being good at. If somebody else does something quite well, you kind of get a bit jealous about that and kind of a bit threatened by it. Yeah. You believe that your intelligence stays the same, so it can't change significantly. You're inclined to give up easily if you can't do something. You see effort as pointless, which is quite interesting because effort is seen in a very different way in the growth mindset. Right. So in the fixed mindset, if you're being seen to put in a lot of effort, you kind of feel that puts out the message that you're not naturally clever. Whereas in the growth mindset, you know that effort is important, and actually that's what's going to help you create that progress and that growth.
Exactly. Yeah.
They see setbacks as failure. So rather that if you have a setback, it's the end of the world and actually you might give up on it, whatever it is, rather than see it as an opportunity to learn what caused or how could you get around that setback. Putting in effort shows you're not smart, and then ultimately that's going to mean that you achieve less. And then the opposing growth mindset list that kind of counteracts that is that you love challenges, you see that the world can change, you use feedback, you learn from criticism, you learn from mistakes, you're inspired by other people's success rather than being threatened by it. You can develop your intelligence. Rather than giving up, you are more inclined to keep going because you know that that's going to be useful. Effort is important. Learn from setbacks. Putting in effort makes you smart, and ultimately that's going to help you achieve more. And then an extra part to all of that, which I think is quite a good way to think about things, and it kind of leads me on to the bit about neuroplasticity. Is I produced 2 images that are flowers. So we have a fixed mindset flower, which is looking a bit dead. And then on the next page, we've got a growth mindset flower, which is looking much more perky, and there's a nice sunshine. And basically, the idea behind the flowers is that the seed at the bottom, which is the start of it all, is about what you believe about the brain. So the fixed mindset is very much about believing that the brain is a static entity and that what you're born with, intelligence-wise, is what you've got. So actually, that's not a very promising start point for learning, because if you've only got a certain amount of intelligence, then you are going to want to protect what you've got at all costs, because if you make mistakes or you are putting in a lot of effort, so people might not think you're very clever. Right. You don't want to fail because that's going to make you look not very intelligent. And it's all about this protection. So you're not likely to take on challenges or things that you can't do. You're going to stick to what you know. And you want to achieve things straight away, because if you don't achieve things straight away, again, that looks like you're not very clever. Right. So in terms of where I sit as a teacher, you can see that that's not a very good starting point for us being able to get learning happening in the classroom, because instantly we're sticking to things we know. So they're just churning out the same old stuff that they're not actually learning anything. And if they're having this reaction that actually I don't like not being able to achieve things, and they turn off, then the behaviour often goes out the window. So it is absolutely critical that in schools, I mean, I would say personally that before we do anything in schools, getting this stuff right and being talked about explicitly with children all of the time, getting that language going is crucial, because you're not going to make that progress if you've got those kinds of those thinkings in place.
Right. You were talking about teachers, and I know, excuse me while I turn around, but one of the books, I think I shared this one with you, which is a great book for teachers, because it kind of it goes through the months, and it also shares with you how each month could have its own theme.
Yeah.
And it gives you the daily activities that you could do during that month to develop a growth mindset in children. So if anybody's interested in that, this is a great book. It's a teacher's month-by-month handbook for empowering students to achieve, and it's by Annie Brock and Heather Hundley. So this is a great book for teachers. Want to switch gears here just a little bit, because a lot of what you have talked about in children, I see a lot of it in the adult women that I work with. And so I'm thinking that this mindset, the concept of the growth versus fixed mindset is definitely something that we also see in adults.
Yeah, well, that's where I started with it, and why I got so passionate, I think, in the first place. I could see it within myself, and I'm a teacher.
Right. And so I too had noticed, once I started reading more and more about the concepts, I too saw myself with a lot of fixed growth characteristics. And we do have both.
That's really important to point out. It's not that you're a fixed person or a growth person, definitely.
Right. You're not one or the other. I mean, I have a fixed mindset about certain things, like, playing basketball. Let's say playing basketball. That's something I have a fixed mindset about, me never being able to do, because it's not something I'm interested in doing.
Yeah.
So
it's about, a lot of it is about recognizing your trigger points. So like you're talking about basketball, before we came on, I was having a conversation with you about technology, which is my nemesis. And I know that before I approach something that involves working with technology, I have to kind of brace myself a bit and put my armor on, because I'm thinking, I'm learning something here. This is okay. I'm out of my comfort zone, but that's good.
Exactly. You're so right about technology. I mean, we should talk about that a little bit more, because in this world of social media and everything that's going on, it's just no way possible to really know everything. And like you, when I'm learning something new, I do kind of get tensed up, because I don't want people to think, oh, she should really know that, and that's that fixed mindset coming into play. Whereas with that growth mindset, I would be more inclined to say, hey, this is something new. It's a challenge. I'm excited to learn it, and every failure that I encounter, I'm going to learn something from it. So it's only going to push me closer and closer to my ultimate goal. And I think that that's something that we have to, recognize, because I just want people to understand that we all have both, and it's cool to have both.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's just recognizing, if you come to really understand, and it will just to start off with, it will be just a recognition. At certain moments you might go, oh, hang on, that was a bit fixed, wasn't it? Once you start to understand. And then for me, I mean, I've been dealing with this stuff now for about 9 years, like I said, and it is now a part of me. And whether I want to get away from it or not, because it doesn't lead to the easy life, but it is definitely a more satisfying life that you achieve more. So I am here, I'm doing what I'm doing because I have really, I've embraced it. And it's quite ironic, really, that what I'm talking about and promoting is actually what has got me to this point. And I think that's another reason why I'm so passionate about it. And I want it to help children, particularly other adults, and I think going back to what you were saying about adults, that this affects adults, I don't think you can get to the children and affect their mindsets if you don't first affect the adults that they're kind of in proximity with and working with. So I would say it's a family journey, a school journey. You know, if you come into contact with kids, which most of us do, this is, they will look to us. You know, I've had a moment with my daughter today where she was imitating me. I mean, she's only 3, so there's a lot of imitation going on at the moment. Like she was sitting on my lap and I was reading a story to her, and I had to say to her, "Oh, Esme, I need to move you because my leg's gone to sleep." And I didn't really think about what I said, but then about 5 minutes later, she said, "Oh, Mummy, my leg's gone to sleep." And I thought it was hilarious. And they're watching us all the time. And while they're young, obviously a lot of that is very obvious. But even as they're getting older, they are watching us. They're finding out what our value system is by the way that we are operating and how we react to mistakes or setbacks, or if somebody criticizes something that we've done or gives us a bit of feedback, if we go off on one about it, they're learning.
That's right. That's right. And you mentioned mistakes, which triggered something in my mind. You know, in my house, we just developed a mistake mantra. You know, when you make a mistake, it's like, "Ooh, that was a cool mistake. That was a great mistake because this is what I learned."
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a lot to be said for mantras.
Yeah, and you have to learn to normalize mistakes. You know, you have to learn to normalize them. Kiva Monroe said that is so true. I mean, you do. You have to make mistakes are going to happen, and it's just a part of life. And so just develop a mantra about it. I see you getting ready to share something with us for mantras.
Yeah, I was just going to say to you, because you made me think that, so these are my 2 picture books. This one came first. This is called I Can't Do This. They're all about a little character who's on, I can show you on the back here, called hang on, where's my camera? Fortitude. So the first one is all about his journey to find the word yet. So it's not that I can't do this, I just can't do it yet. And then the second one, and this is what made me think, is about mistakes. And I've basically tried to make some really cute little characters. And this is an exercise that you can do with children about making their own mistake monsters. Okay, so you're kind of trying to make them friendly little beings rather than something to be scared of.
Right. Well, you know, Carol Dweck talks about a school in Chicago where the teachers all decided that they would no longer give letter grades, and they will give the grade not yet. And how that slight change really boosts the children's level of education, everything that they were learning. So instead of getting a D on a math problem, they got the grade not yet. And that encouraged them to then begin thinking more critically about finding the answers to the question. If you get a D or an F, it's like, and it kind of stomps your growth. You just don't want to go anywhere. It's like, I can't do this. But if you give them the grade not yet, then that opens the doors to more possibilities, and it opens the doors to establishing a stronger growth mindset.
Yeah, it puts them back on that learning curve and gives them more control over things.
Absolutely.
And it's just a shift in your mind and your language. Language is hugely, hugely important.
Yes. So tell us a little bit, you talked about that we could not fully change or impact our kids unless we too develop a stronger growth mindset. So do you have some strategies or techniques that parents can use, especially now? You know, in my introduction, I was saying that a lot of the kids are home much earlier than anticipated, so parents have a much longer time to work with them this summer. So what are some things that they could possibly do this summer to develop that growth mindset culture at home?
Okay. So I've had to think about, I was thinking about adults and separately thinking about children. But actually, To be honest, everything crosses over, because anything that helps you will help your children and vice versa. But the things that in my new book, Mindset Guardian, one of the things that I say in there is that if I were to sum up 3 points, the magic number three things that I think are the most critical things about creating this culture at home. Number one, I would say, is about creating a safe space. So if you think about all of the things that we've talked about in the fixed mindset, particularly, I think I spoke to you before, not on here, but sort of separately, about making yourself vulnerable. And I mentioned Brené Brown, her book Daring Greatly, in particular. And she's all about vulnerability and the importance of making yourself vulnerable. And when I'm talking about being vulnerable, I'm talking about that feeling of kind of being naked on stage and not knowing how people are going to react to you. Are they going to laugh, or are they going to applaud? So if you want children to, and yourselves, if you want to gain a growth mindset, and you're going to kind of put yourself out there, because it's this whole idea of protection, and you're kind of coming out of that comfort zone, you need to create a safe space in lots and lots of different ways. And it's very difficult for me to talk about all of that, because there are so many things that you can do to create a safe space. But one of them, we use the analogy of a fried egg. Okay, so what that is all about, bear with me. The middle bit is your yolk, is your yummy yolk, and that is your comfort zone. It's the things that you already know how to do. Then the bit around that is your wobbly white. So as it's cooking in the pan, that's the bit that's not quite firm, and that is your kind of learning zone, and it's where you don't feel entirely solid yet. And actually, that's a good place to talk to children about their feelings, about how they feel when they're learning something new. So when I've spoken to kids about it before, I've had words like anxious, frustrated, scared, worried. There's all of those kinds of words come in. I mean, you do get some positives as well from some children that might say excited, which is great. You can kind of see that they're moving in the right direction. But and then the crispy frazzled edge around the outside of your egg, if you've overcooked it, is where you are maybe trying something that's a little bit too difficult at the moment. But if you take a step back into your learning zone, or your wobbly white, then and do a bit more consolidation and practice, then you will reach kind of those outer layers. And the idea is to kind of, one, give children a learning language in which they can talk to you about where they are in their learning. I mean, I was teaching a class, I remember very vividly teaching a maths class once, and I happened to be standing in a part of the classroom where I had this egg sort of behind me on the display, and a little girl came over to me, and she had tears in her eyes, and she said, I can't get this. And all I did was look up at this egg, and because she knew, like, we talked about it and what it meant, and I just pointed to the white, and she kind of looked at me as if to say, okay, I'm learning something new here. It's okay that I'm feeling like this. And that was all just really from one look, but it kind of, you could get a shared understanding about why you might be feeling this way. And it also allows us to show children, or talk about the fact that learning is not a static entity. It's always changing. So what once was on your frazzled edge, or in your learning zone, eventually, if you attack it enough and do that deliberate practice, it's going to be in your yummy yolk. And then, the whole process will start again with something new. Right. And it's powerful. It's really powerful. And if I quote this in the book, actually, I had a parent who she actually emailed me, and she said, we've just had this most amazing moment at home with Felix, because he was a child, he got quite nervous about things, but he used to go to something, I don't know if do you have Cubs and Scouts over there?
Yeah, Boy Scouts.
And he was going to I think it was Ghost Stories by torchlight. And he was really nervous about it. He was really scared and was like, what do I do if I don't think I can do this because I'm feeling really nervous about it. And his mum was trying to kind of coax him to go. And then he suddenly sat on his chair at the dinner table and said, I've got to get into my my wobbly white. I'm going to go and put my uniform on. And he just shot up the stairs. So she instantly emailed me and was like, this is having an amazing effect on Felix, because he's starting to really adjust his thinking and push himself a little bit and see that it's okay. So it sounds like a simple thing, but if you can kind of get that language and that understanding, when you hit those moments, you can talk about it together. And that's really powerful.
So we need to get an illustration of the egg yolk and the wobbly white and the edges. And every parent needs to have one in their home so that they can
you having one on your wall.
Yeah, and have it hanging up on the wall, because I really think that's a great analogy for one, in creating a safe space, I guess, at home to have those kinds of conversations.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you get jelly cats over in the States?
What is that?
Toys. Jelly cats, they're cuddly toys that are really, really soft. I don't know if they do them in the States, but the only reason I'm mentioning it is because I've recently discovered that, because they produce loads of different things, and they've recently started producing a fried egg. Which, actually, I think a friend of mine, the reason I know about it was a friend of mine was in Canada on holiday and she saw it there and then let me know about it because I hadn't seen them. So I think you probably could get them over there.
We could probably get them. We could check Amazon. Do you all have Amazon? Do you have Amazon, the website?
Yes. Yeah. Okay.
It might be on Amazon, I'm sure. Everything.
Yeah, could be. But they're called jelly cats. So yeah, have a look.
Okay. So that's one strategy, to make the home a safe place to have those types of conversations.
Yes. Okay. Another thing that I won't be able to go into a lot of detail about this but praise. Praise is a massive thing. I would say, actually, for parenting, from the parenting perspective, praise is probably the biggest area that you kind of have to look at as a parent, and how you praise. So it's not that Dweck is saying that we shouldn't praise, because I think that was the release of this kind of information. I think some people read it as don't praise your children. And that's not where she's coming from at all. What she's talking about is how we praise our children and what we praise them for. So because of this wanting to protect our intelligence, if you start labeling a child, labeling isn't great in whatever form, but particularly in relation to this, in terms of intelligence, if you're calling your child clever, or even just good girl or good boy, if you look at what has just occurred that has made you say that, it's a label that they are wanting to hang on to. So if they are wanting praise, which obviously all kids want praise, if they are getting praised for something because it's a marvelous piece of work or whatever it is that they've done, and they've done it right, obviously the natural reaction for all of us as parents is to go, oh, clever girl or clever boy. But actually the underlying message that you are giving them is you are clever because you've done it. If you didn't do it, you wouldn't be considered to be clever. And they want to stay on this kind of pedestal, and so they don't want to lose that label. So that's going to make them want to stick to things that they know they can do well, so that they get that praise again. So, I've been exploring, particularly with the research for this new book, and also because of becoming a parent myself. My daughter's 3 now, but I did a lot of research kind of around praise, and you may have heard of Alfie Kohn. I think he's American. And he's a parenting psychologist, quite widely known. And I read some of his work, and he has a similar sort of thing about praise, not entirely the same. He does mention Dweck in his books, or one of his books that he's written, and he actually talks about praise. And one of his suggestions is that actually, when we praise, who are we actually praising for? Is it that the child needs to hear that praise, or is it just that we feel the need to say it? Because if it's because we feel we need to say it, that's when we need to reassess. And actually, sometimes we don't need to praise. You kind of just let the children enjoy what it is that has happened. What I have basically, Duet, coming back to what she says about praise, is that you shouldn't be praising the intelligence and labeling the child. You should be looking at their processes. So if they have made mistakes and reflected on it, or if they have had a setback and they've come up with a strategy to work around it, or if they've tried something new that they've been a bit worried about, those are the kinds of things that we should be noticing, because again, that is telling them what our value system is and what we're wanting from them.
Right.
And it's all about progress. What are you doing? Yes, it's hard, but actually, I don't necessarily want the perfect product at the end of this. I want to know what you've done along the way and what barriers you've come across and got through.
Thank you. Well, look, we're running a little short on time, but I do want you to talk a little bit about your new book that's coming out, The Mindset Guardian, because I think just based on the conversations that we've had about your book, I think this will be a great resource for parents to use as they're continuing to build that growth mindset in their home culture.
Yes. Okay. So the Mindset Guardian, it's something that I'm going to be, out of all of my books, I think it's going to end up being the one that I am most proud of, because it has taken me, I would say, about 4.5 years to complete, because I started it before I had my daughter. And I was literally writing right up until the point that I gave birth to her. I had her. And then, because it sounds really ridiculous that I'm writing a parenting book when I'm not a parent myself, but I was writing it from the point of view of being a teacher, working in education. And one of the things that was constantly said over and over again in relation to mindset was, what is the point of us doing all of this and driving all of this and talking in this way and creating this culture if those children then go home and have all of that undone? We need it to be happening, sort of giving joint messages, because otherwise it's just confusing for children. So that is part of my mission, is to get to parents, but actually it helps us all. It's a really positive way of living life for everybody. And once you start to see it and delve into it, there are little things that will happen. Like, I bet you tomorrow somebody will say, clever girl or clever boy, and you'll go, oh, because you can't, once you know, you can't fail to read these situations differently. So yeah, so anyway, so she was born, and then I had a whole new sort of angle on it, and it informed so much of it that it wasn't that I started writing it again, but I just had so much more to bring to it. And also the illustrations, I do the illustrations as well, which is also part of my growth mindset, because it's not an area that I'd never considered at school.
Yeah.
And I found it through this, and I love it. And it just allows me to express a lot of the ideas around mindset in kind of a different way, in a sort of maybe more abstract, creative sort of way.
Right. Well, we are so excited for that to come out. Do you have a date or pending date?
Well, if everything goes smoothly, I was talking to somebody yesterday on the phone about it, and if everything goes according to plan, it should be end of August, beginning of September, but that's if things run smoothly. So hope it will be this year. I'm sure it will be this year.
I'm sure when it comes out, you will let me know.
Yeah, definitely.
Share this with everyone here, because I'm really excited to get a copy of it. I really am.
Oh, thank you.
Great. So I'll just keep in touch with me on that. So I'm going to check to see if we had any other questions, and we don't. But what I would like, because this will probably be replayed some more, and if there are any questions, what I would do is ask any of you in the audience, if you do have any questions, to go ahead and leave those questions with us at PurposeBound Women, and we will get those questions to KJ and try and get some answers to those questions for you. So again, KJ, I really do thank you for coming on today and sharing with us. I've learned a lot. I was going to be taking notes, but then I thought about it. I can hit the replay and I can take some notes later because you always share some very interesting things. And I really do want to appreciate, I thank you for staying up a little later tonight. I know it's almost
No,
9
that's no
o'clock.
problem. I'm thoroughly enjoying it. Thank you.
But again, thank you so much for being with us. And to all of you out there in Facebook and on YouTube, this is LaWanda Woods Howard. I'm known as the Mindset Destroyer at PurposeBound Women. Thank you so much for joining us today.